You are listening to Silent Waves Radio, and before we begin, we want to be absolutely clear. Everything you are about to hear is entirely fictional, created for entertainment and storytelling purposes only, and bears no relation to any real events, real people, or real places in the world as it exists today. With that said, settle in, because this is going to be a long one. This is Alex Mercer, and you are tuned to Silent Waves Radio, broadcasting on emergency frequency from what we are currently describing as an undisclosed secure location, a bunker, reinforced, buried, and as of this moment, operational. We have backup power. We have a satellite uplink that is, by some grace, still functioning, and we have a responsibility, as long as these systems hold, to keep talking, to keep you informed, to make sure that whoever is out there, in whatever shelter or structure or hole in the ground you have found to keep yourself alive, you are not alone, and you are not without information. The date of the initial event, as we are calling it, is now approximately 4 hours behind us. That means we are roughly 4 hours into what can only be described as the most significant civilizational disruption in recorded human history. I want to be precise about language here, because language matters more than ever right now. We are not using the word casually. We are not sensationalizing. What we are describing, based on every verified communication we have received, every government frequency we have been monitoring, and every first-hand account that has reached this broadcast station, is the beginning of a coordinated, exponential, biological collapse of human society across at least 4 continents. I will give you numbers. I will give you timelines. But first, Sierra.
Thank you, Alex. My name is Sierra Lane, and I want to start by saying something that Alex will probably frame differently, but that I think needs to be said plainly. If you are listening to this right now, if this voice is reaching you through a hand-cranked radio, through a phone with 3% battery, through a speaker mounted in some forgotten basement, you matter. Your life matters. The fact that you found a way to tune in means you are still thinking, still orienting, still trying to understand what is happening to your world. And I want to honor that. I want to talk to you not just about statistics and vectors, but about people, about what this looks and feels like from ground level, because the human story of this event is not a sidebar to the main coverage. It is the main coverage. Everything else is context. What is happening to families right now, what is happening to children and elderly people and nurses who showed up for their shift and found something that defied everything they had been trained for, that is the story. So while Alex tracks the numbers, I am going to track the people. And right now, those people are terrified, and some of them are brave beyond anything I have ever heard, and some of them are doing things that will break your heart, and all of them deserve to be heard.
Let me establish a factual baseline for listeners who may be joining us for the first time. At approximately 0200 hours local time in Central Europe, specifically in the urban zones surrounding Warsaw, Poland, and Krakow, Poland, emergency services began receiving calls of an unusual nature. The initial description from dispatch logs, which we have accessed via a still functioning Polish civil defense frequency, described individuals exhibiting severe behavioral dysregulation, apparent loss of higher cognitive function, extreme physical aggression, and what witnesses described as an absence of pain response. Within 40 minutes of those first calls, the volume of emergency reports had increased by what Polish authorities estimated at the time to be roughly 400%. By the time Warsaw General Hospital's emergency wing attempted to implement a containment protocol, it was already, by all accounts, far too late for that particular institution. We are also receiving reports, unverified at this stage but consistent across multiple independent sources, of simultaneous or near simultaneous outbreaks in Bucharest, Romania, Lyon, France, and what appears to be at least 2 locations in the greater Istanbul metropolitan area in Turkey. These are not confirmed clusters, but the pattern is troubling.
I want to read something to our listeners right now. We received this message approximately 90 minutes ago through our emergency text relay system, and I'm going to read it exactly as it was written, punctuation included. It reads, "We are in an apartment building in Krakow. There are 11 of us. We have barricaded the stairwell door with a refrigerator and a bookcase. My name is Marta. I am 31 years old. I am a school teacher. There are 3 children here who are not mine, and I do not know where their parents are. The youngest is 4. Her name is Zosha. She keeps asking me when her mother is coming back, and I keep telling her soon, because what else do you tell a 4-year-old? We have water from the taps and some food, and we have not seen anything on the street for the last 20 minutes, but before that, I do not have words for what it was. Please keep broadcasting. Please do not stop talking. Your voices are the only thing that feels normal right now." That message is from Marta in Krakow. And if by any chance she is still listening, Marta, we hear you. We are not stopping.
We are now approximately 5.5 hours into confirmed outbreak activity in Europe, and the pattern of spread is becoming, regrettably, easier to map. I want to address the mechanism insofar as we currently understand it, because there is a great deal of speculation circulating on whatever communication channels remain active, and I would rather give you the vetted information and acknowledge its limits than allow misinformation to fill the space. What we know, the causative agent appears to be biological in nature. Most current analysis from the World Health Organization's Emergency Response Team, which issued a preliminary bulletin approximately 2 hours ago before their Geneva feed went intermittent, suggests a pathogen of unknown origin that targets neurological tissue, specifically the prefrontal cortex and the limbic system. The result is catastrophic behavioral disinhibition. Affected individuals cease to exhibit reasoning, self-preservation instinct in the conventional sense, or social recognition. They become, for lack of a more clinical term, driven almost entirely by an aggressive predatory reflex. Transmission appears to occur through fluid exchange, specifically through bites, though the WHO bulletin noted that transmission efficiency is, and I quote, extraordinarily high by any previously observed biological standard. That is the information we have. I want to be clear about what we do not know. We do not know the incubation period precisely. Estimates range from minutes to several hours, and that variance alone is operationally terrifying. We do not know the geographic origin of the pathogen. We do not know whether any current pharmaceutical intervention is effective. Those are honest gaps in our knowledge, and I will fill them as data arrives.
6 hours in. I want to tell you about what is happening on the roads because our traffic and civil infrastructure monitors, the ones that are still live, are painting a picture that I think many of our listeners may already be experiencing firsthand if you are anywhere near a major population center. The highways out of Warsaw are, as of our most recent satellite image, which is approximately 40 minutes old, a complete standstill. Not slow traffic, a standstill. Thousands of vehicles stopped, many of them abandoned, doors open, engines still running in some cases. The E30 motorway heading west toward Berlin is described by our monitor as resembling, and I'm quoting him directly, a parking lot that stretches to the horizon. People are on foot. Families are carrying children and bags and pets and what they could grab. The temperature in central Poland tonight is approximately 3 degrees Celsius. That is cold. That is cold enough that the very young and the very old will struggle if they are out there for extended periods without shelter or warmth. And the roads are not safe. The roads are not safe in a way that is different from traffic danger. I want to be honest with you about that without causing unnecessary panic. If you are in a shelter and you are debating whether to get on the road, please listen to the next hour of our broadcast before making that decision. Please do not move without information.
We now have our first confirmed government response at the national level. The French government has issued a state of emergency via their civil alert system, which reached us through a relay in southern France that is still operational. President's office statement reads as follows. The Republic of France is facing an unprecedented biological event of unknown origin. In accordance with emergency public health law, a national curfew is immediately and indefinitely in effect. Citizens are directed to shelter in place. Do not open doors. Do not travel. Emergency services are being mobilized. The government is in continuous session and will provide updates at regular intervals. End of statement. What that statement does not address, and what I want to flag for our listeners, is the situation in Lyon, which we mentioned earlier. Our last confirmed contact from within Lyon came approximately 70 minutes ago, from a civil defense relay operator whose name we are withholding at his family's request. His final transmission described hospital systems in Lyon as, and I quote, non-functional. He described the streets of the second arrondissement as inaccessible to emergency vehicles. And then his signal ended. We do not know the status of that operator. We do not know the status of Lyon. What we know is that a French government statement directing citizens to shelter in place does not square with what our last Lyon contact described. And that gap concerns me professionally and deeply.
We are getting messages from so many places right now. I want to read another one because I think it illustrates something important about what human beings do in impossible moments. This one came in about 20 minutes ago through our relay, and it is from a listener who identifies herself as a nurse named Adiaze, who says she is in a hospital in Bucharest, Romania. She writes, I have been on shift for 11 hours. I was supposed to go home at 7 in the morning. My children are at home with my husband. I have called him 4 times, and he picks up and tells me they are okay and to stay safe. I am still at the hospital because there are patients here who cannot move themselves, and I am not going to leave them. There are 6 of us nurses who stayed. The rest ran. And I understand why they ran. I am not judging them. If my children were here, I would have run too. But they are not here. So I am staying. We have moved all the patients we can to the upper floors. We have barricaded the stairwells. If this broadcast reaches anyone with authority or with any kind of resource, please know that Floreasca Hospital in Bucharest has patients and staff who are alive and who need help. Adiaze, we hear you. We are broadcasting your location. We are pushing this information to every frequency we can access. And what you are doing is something that I do not have a word for that is large enough.
8 hours since the first Warsaw reports. Let me give you the numbers as they currently stand, and I want to emphasize that these are incomplete and will be revised as information arrives, almost certainly upward. Confirmed fatalities, meaning deaths that have been attributed to direct outbreak-related violence, not secondary causes, stand at this moment at an estimated 47,000 across confirmed European outbreak zones. That number has increased roughly 6-fold in the last 2 hours. Warsaw is effectively non-communicating at this stage. We have lost all civil signal from the city center, and our satellite imaging shows thermal signatures consistent with multiple large fires in the downtown corridor. Krakow is partially communicating. We are still receiving intermittent signals from several locations, including, I am relieved to say, a building consistent with Marta's earlier description. Bucharest's communications infrastructure appears to be degrading rapidly. Istanbul is, frankly, a crisis of its own scale, a city of 15 million people, with a geography that creates natural choke points, and reports of outbreak activity in at least 6 distinct districts. The Bosphorus Bridge, both of them, are, according to Turkish civil defense, completely gridlocked. There is no vehicular movement in or out of the European side of Istanbul. None. That is a transportation failure of a scale that I genuinely do not have precedent to compare to in my professional experience.
I need to address something because I have now received over 200 messages asking versions of the same question, and I want to answer it honestly. People are asking, is this happening everywhere? And the honest answer, as best as we can tell right now, is not yet. But the word yet is doing a great deal of work in that sentence, and I want to be responsible about what that means. Reports from North America as of approximately 1 hour ago suggest that major cities are still functioning, though operating under extreme alert conditions. New York City has implemented what the mayor's office is calling a precautionary lockdown. All public transit has been halted, the airports are closed to commercial traffic, the National Guard has been mobilized along what they're calling a coastal monitoring perimeter. There are reports of small isolated incidents in the outer boroughs, but as yet no confirmed large-scale outbreak. Chicago, Los Angeles, Toronto, similarly, high alert, sheltering in place, but as of our last confirmed data, not yet an active crisis. This is not good news so much as it is a window of time. If you are in North America and you are listening to this, that window exists right now, and it may not exist in 12 hours. The time to prepare your shelter, to secure your location, to find a defensible space and get into it, is right now before the window closes. Please do not spend this window in denial.
We have received a communication from what identifies itself as a NATO Emergency Coordination Cell, which we believe is operating out of a facility in southern Germany. The message is authenticated to a reasonable degree of confidence through the encryption protocol it uses, which our technical team recognizes from previous NATO civil emergency broadcasts. The communication reads as follows. NATO member nations are currently coordinating a multi-front military and civil response to the biological event currently designated Operation Blackwater. All active military personnel are recalled to base. Rules of engagement for the protection of civilian populations are under urgent review at command level. Member nations are authorized to implement martial law provisions at the discretion of national governments. Civilian population centers with confirmed outbreak activity at greater than 30% estimated population penetration are to be considered containment zones. Citizens in such zones are directed to seek elevated, reinforced positions and await extraction. I want to parse one phrase in that statement carefully. Containment zones. In military and public health language, a containment zone is not a rescue designation. It is a boundary designation. It means resources are being positioned at the perimeter, not the interior. For our listeners in Warsaw, in the deep zones of Istanbul, in Lyon. If you are inside what NATO has designated a containment zone, extraction is not the immediate priority of the international response. Shelter, elevation, and patience are your tools right now. I say this not to discourage you, but because knowing the honest operational reality may save your life.
12 hours. We are 12 hours in. I want to take a breath here, not to slow down, but to acknowledge what 12 hours means. 12 hours ago, most of the people listening to this broadcast woke up in beds they considered safe. Most of you went through morning routines. Some of you had coffee. Some of you said goodbye to someone before you left for work, or kissed a child on the forehead while they slept, in the way that you do without thinking, because you always assumed there would be another morning exactly like it. 12 hours is not a long time in geological terms, not a long time in historical terms. But in 12 hours, the world that those of you above a certain age have lived your entire lives inside, the world of open streets and functioning hospitals and governments that answer phones and airports that process 30,000 flights a day, that world has fundamentally changed. I am not telling you it is gone. I am not ready to say that, and I don't believe it is. But it has changed in a way that means the path forward runs through something none of us has ever navigated before. I want to talk about what that path might look like, and I want to do it carefully and honestly, because you deserve honesty more than you deserve comfort right now.
Infrastructure status update as of the 12-hour mark. Power grids. Western Europe is experiencing cascading failures consistent with a loss of operational staff at key management nodes. The German National Grid Authority, Bundesnetzagentur, issued what appears to be its last coordinated transmission approximately 90 minutes ago, reporting that grid operators across 11 substations had abandoned posts, creating load imbalances that were triggering automatic shutdowns. As a result, approximately 40% of Germany's power distribution network is currently down or in unstable status. France's RTE Grid Authority has gone completely silent. Poland, no signal. Romania, no signal. The United Kingdom is, remarkably, still substantially functional in terms of power. The channel appears to be providing, at least for now, a meaningful geographic buffer, and the UK government has activated military personnel at all national grid management sites. This will not last indefinitely, but it is a meaningful stabilizing factor. In Asia, Japan's grid is under strain. There are reports of significant outbreak activity in the Osaka metropolitan area, and the Japanese government has imposed a total nationwide state of emergency. South Korea has closed all borders and moved its entire active military force to a civilian protection posture. Australia, still largely functional. I want to be precise. It is not that Australia is unaffected. There are reports of at least 3 outbreak locations in Sydney, but geographic isolation and rapid government response have, at this stage, limited spread. That situation is not guaranteed to hold.
I have in front of me a transcript that was relayed to us from a surviving civil defense operator in Budapest, Hungary, and I want to read a portion of it because it describes something that I think needs to be part of the record. This operator, her name is Petra, she is a civil defense communications officer, describes arriving at her station at the beginning of her shift before the outbreak had reached Budapest at significant scale, and finding messages from her counterpart in Warsaw. She says the last message from her Warsaw colleague was sent at approximately 2:15 in the morning local time, and it read as follows. Petra, it is very bad here, very bad. I am going to stay on frequency as long as I can. If I stop transmitting, please tell my wife I love her and I was not afraid. And Petra says she stayed on her frequency and kept relaying information to us and to anyone who would receive it, and that she is still at her post right now in Budapest, which as of this moment has not experienced widespread outbreak penetration. She says she is staying because he stayed, because her colleague in Warsaw stayed, and she considers it, in her words, the only correct thing to do. I want to say that name for the record. Petra. And the Warsaw operator whose name Petra did not give us because she does not know his surname, but who stayed at his post in Warsaw and kept transmitting until he stopped. We do not know what happened to him, but we know he was there.
18 hours. Let me recalibrate the situation comprehensively. We are now looking at confirmed or near-confirmed outbreak saturation in the following major urban centers. Warsaw, total saturation, civil function 0. Bucharest, approximately 70% penetration, civil function minimal. Lyon, status uncertain. Last confirmed report placed penetration at 40% or higher. Istanbul, the European side of the city, is effectively non-communicating. The Asian side is in active military lockdown. Bosphorus crossings destroyed by Turkish military order to prevent spread. I'll come back to that. Osaka, Japan. Approximately 50% penetration. Japanese self-defense forces in active containment operation. In addition, we have new and deeply concerning reports emerging from Mumbai, India, a city of 21 million people, where civil authorities confirmed 2 hours ago that outbreak activity has been detected in at least the Dharavi and Andheri districts. The sheer population density of Mumbai makes this one of the most alarming developments of the last 6 hours. Also, Lagos, Nigeria. Population 15 million. Reports are fragmented and difficult to verify. But what signals we are receiving from Lagos suggest a situation developing faster than the city's infrastructure can respond to. And Sao Paulo, Brazil. I want to be careful here because our data is thin. But 3 independent sources have described something beginning in the city's periphery.
About the Bosphorus bridges, Alex mentioned that the Turkish military destroyed the crossings. I want to sit with that for a moment because I think what it represents is one of the first instances we have seen of a government making an explicit decision to sacrifice some of its population to protect another part of it. The military detonated the bridge charges at approximately 15 hours into the event. At that moment, according to our best estimate, there were somewhere between 12 and 20,000 people on those bridges. People who were in vehicles, on foot, trying to cross from the European side to the Asian side, fleeing the outbreak. When the order was given, those people were still on the bridge. We do not know the exact number. We know that some of them made it to the Asian shore before the detonation. We know that others did not. The Turkish government has not issued a statement about the bridges specifically. The NATO coordination cell acknowledged the action as, quote, operationally necessary. I am not here to judge the Turkish military command. I do not have the information they had when they made that decision, and I am not willing to condemn from this bunker a choice that may have saved the Asian side of Istanbul. But I also refuse to present it as simply operationally necessary, without acknowledging that those were human beings on that bridge. Each one of them was someone's Zosha, someone's Marta. That is not editorializing. That is just truth.
22 hours. North America. Update. The United States government has upgraded its status to a federal emergency declaration. President's office statement reads, in part, the United States government is fully mobilized in response to what is now a global biological catastrophe. Martial law is in effect in the following metropolitan areas: New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, Miami, Seattle, and Houston. All civilians are ordered to shelter in place. Movement is restricted without military clearance. The National Guard and active military are authorized to use all necessary force to maintain public order and prevent spread. Emergency FEMA resources are being deployed to establish hardened shelter facilities at designated locations. End of statement. What the statement does not say, but what our own monitoring confirms, is that there are now confirmed outbreak clusters in Brooklyn, New York, the south side of Chicago, and a rapidly expanding situation in the Miami metropolitan area. The U.S. military has set up what are being called hard lines around these clusters, but a hard line works when the threat moves in human behavioral patterns. When the threat is a person who moves without fear, does not respond to warning shots, and can pass through an unmaintained gap in any perimeter, the math of perimeter security becomes extremely difficult. I say this not to create despair, but because understanding the limitation of military containment is operationally useful to civilians who are making shelter decisions.
We have received a message that I want to read very carefully because it changes tone from what we have been sharing. It came through our relay about 40 minutes ago, and it is from a man who identifies himself only as David, location somewhere in rural France. He will not say exactly where, and I respect that. He says, I am a former French army officer. I am in a house with my wife, our 2 adult children, and our 4 grandchildren. We have food for 3 weeks. We have water. We have weapons, and I know how to use them. I am not afraid. What I am is angry. I am angry at every government that received the early warning signals. And they received them. I know they received them because I know how these systems work. And said nothing. I am angry that we live in a world where the first priority when something like this begins is not warning the public but managing the panic response. People who had 48 hours of warning could have gotten their families into safety. That time was taken from us. I am telling you this not because it helps anything now, but because if there is an afterward, someone needs to say it. David, we hear you. And I think what you are describing about early warning suppression is something that this broadcast intends to explore in depth as this coverage continues. You are not wrong that questions will need to be answered. You are not wrong at all.
30 hours. I want to give a comprehensive fatality estimate, and I want to be transparent about the methodology and its limitations. We are working from confirmed reports where available, estimated population penetration percentages in known outbreak zones where direct count is impossible, and survivor testimony. Our current best estimate for direct outbreak-related deaths at the 30-hour mark stands at approximately 1.2 million. I want to let that number exist in the air for a moment, because numbers of this scale require active processing. 1.2 million people in 30 hours. To provide context, the deadliest single day in recorded military history, the first day of the Battle of the Somme, saw approximately 60,000 British casualties. We have experienced that scale roughly 20 times in 30 hours. The bulk of these fatalities are concentrated in Warsaw, where we believe the near total population of approximately 1.8 million has been exposed, with survivorship confined to a small number of hardened shelters. In Istanbul, where the European side population of roughly 5 million is largely non-communicating, and in Mumbai, where the situation has deteriorated with alarming speed over the last 6 hours. These are estimates. The true number is almost certainly higher.
I want to describe what a hospital looks like right now because we have received multiple accounts, and they are consistent enough that I believe we can paint a picture. A doctor named Kwame, who reached us from a message relay, describes his experience in a teaching hospital in Accra, Ghana, before he evacuated. He says, "The first patients came in looking like overdoses, disoriented, aggressive, pupils non-reactive, standard triage. By the third patient, something was wrong that we did not have a category for. By the 10th patient, 2 nurses had been bitten. By the time I understood what was happening, the emergency wing was already lost." He pauses in his message. You can feel the pause in the writing somehow, and then he says, "I have worked in medicine for 22 years. I have seen things that most people never see. I was not prepared for this. No one was prepared for this, because nothing in our professional language gave us the tools to describe it. The medical system is not failing because the people in it are failing. The medical system is failing because it was designed for a world in which sick people stay sick in predictable ways, and that world no longer exists." Kwame is now, he says, in a church building with 43 other survivors. They have food and water and a functioning radio. If anyone in the Accra region is listening, the Church of St. Francis in the Lebone area, he says they will take anyone who can get to them.
Day 2. We are now approximately 36 hours into the event. I want to address the communication infrastructure situation in some depth, because it is becoming an increasingly critical factor in our own ability to do what we are doing, and in your ability to receive information and make decisions. Here is the state of global communications as we understand it. The Internet, as a functional global network, is approximately 40% degraded. This is not because the physical infrastructure has failed. Fiber cables do not catch diseases. It is because the systems require human beings to maintain them, and humans are increasingly either sheltering, displaced, or incapacitated. Data centers require staff. Routing nodes require monitoring. When the people stop showing up, the systems begin to degrade in ways that cascade. Cellular networks in Europe are down or severely degraded across France, Poland, Romania, Hungary, and Greece. Turkey's cellular network is intermittent. Satellite communications, which is how this broadcast is reaching many of you, are currently functioning because satellites are automated systems in orbit. but satellite ground stations require power and staff, and these are finite resources. Radio, shortwave, AM, emergency frequencies, is currently the most resilient communication medium on the planet. And that is why we are here. And that is why you are listening. And that is why I want you to hold on to your radio like it is the most valuable thing you own. Because right now it is.
Day 2. I received a message this morning. It feels strange to say morning because I have lost track of when morning is in here, in this bunker, under the artificial lights that run on the backup generator, from a woman named Ingrid who is in Stockholm, Sweden. Sweden is, at this point, one of the more functional remaining European nations. The Scandinavian countries have, due to geographic factors and rapid government response, managed to maintain a significant portion of their infrastructure and civil order. Stockholm is in lockdown, but it is a functioning lockdown. The Swedish government is broadcasting on national emergency frequency and is, by all accounts, providing meaningful guidance and coordination. Ingrid says, "I am listening to your broadcast from my apartment. I have my husband and 2 sons with me. We have enough food. The street outside is empty, the way a street looks on Christmas morning. That early quiet. Except I know it is not quiet because it is Christmas. I keep thinking about the people in Warsaw. I keep thinking Warsaw is not so far from here. Warsaw is a city I have been to. I have walked those streets. I have eaten in restaurants there. And now it is... What is it? It is a cemetery that is not yet still. And I am sitting here in Stockholm and the street looks like Christmas morning. Ingrid, thank you for that image. It is exact. It is the most exact description I have heard."
42 hours. I want to update the map of affected areas because it has changed substantially. In Europe, it is now accurate to say that Central Europe is largely non-functioning as a civil society. Poland, Romania, Hungary, the Czech Republic, parts of Eastern Germany and Northern Greece are in states ranging from severe disruption to total societal collapse in population centers. Western Europe, France, Belgium, the Netherlands, are in active crisis with large portions of major cities unreachable. Germany and Italy are fighting hard, maintaining military presence and significant civilian shelter infrastructure. But the lines are not holding cleanly. The United Kingdom remains the most functional large European nation. The English Channel is proving its worth as a geographic barrier. And the UK government has implemented what is essentially wartime level control with remarkable speed. In Asia, Japan has lost Osaka entirely and is fighting for Kyoto. Tokyo remains in structured emergency, with the government maintaining order through what is being described as extraordinarily disciplined civilian compliance combined with aggressive military response. South Korea, Busan has been lost. Seoul is in lockdown. In the Americas, the United States is fighting a multi-front engagement in nearly every major coastal city. Canada's major cities are in lockdown with varying degrees of success. In South America, Brazil, Colombia, and Argentina are all reporting outbreak activity at urban centers. Africa is the most difficult picture to assess because communications infrastructure was already variable in many regions.
Day 3. I want to read you something that arrived in our relay during what would have been the early hours of the morning. It came from a survivor group in a location they identified only as Underground Station, Paris. They did not specify which station. They are a group of approximately 60 people who sheltered in a metro station and have been living there for the last 2 days. A young man who says he is 19 years old, his name is Antoine, wrote this message. He says, "We have made a kind of city down here. There is a woman who was a baker, and she made bread from some flour she had in a bag she was carrying when she ran. There's a retired police officer who is organizing security watches. There's a doctor, young, just finished her training, but she is treating people as best she can with what we have. There's a little boy who nobody knows, no parents, no ID, maybe 7 years old, and he is fine. He eats and sleeps and plays games with the adults, and I think he is going to be fine. His name is Leo, we decided. We are calling him Leo. He likes it. I am telling you this because I want someone above ground to know that below ground people are still being people. We are still making bread. We are still taking care of each other. Whatever happens above us, down here, we are people. Antoine, Leo, the baker, and the retired officer, and the young doctor. We know about you. We are telling everyone who will listen.
Day 4. The refugee situation has become one of the defining secondary crises of this event. Let me give you numbers. Based on tracking from the remaining functional cross-border checkpoints, the movement of displaced persons from affected zones toward less affected areas is now estimated at somewhere between 40 and 60 million people globally. To frame that, this would represent the largest mass human displacement event in recorded history, dwarfing the refugee crises of the 20th century in both scale and speed. The geographic patterns are fairly predictable. Westward movement within Europe, toward the UK and the Scandinavian corridor, eastward and southward movement in Eastern Europe, some toward Ukraine, which is ironically one of the less affected Eastern European nations due to low initial population density in its eastern zones, northward movement within India and within the Southeast Asian nations, within the United States, movement away from coastal cities and toward rural interior regions, Iowa, Montana, rural Texas. The problem with mass refugee movement is straightforward to articulate and catastrophic to manage. Movement spreads infection. A person who is incubating, who does not yet know they have been exposed, who looks and acts entirely normal, travels 600 kilometers in a car or on foot, and arrives at a safe community, and does not yet know what they are carrying. This is, I believe, the primary mechanism by which the outbreak is penetrating regions that appeared geographically buffered. The buffer is only as reliable as the quarantine of the movement across it.
Day 5. The things I am about to tell you are things I have been waiting to verify before broadcasting, and now I have enough independent confirmation that I feel it is my responsibility to say them. The city of Mumbai, India, population 21 million, is as of approximately 12 hours ago considered by the Indian government to be in their language beyond the threshold of containable response. That phrase was used in a classified communication that was relayed to us by an Indian civil defense officer who has since gone silent. What it means in practice, and the Indian government has not said this publicly, but military sources we have communicated with have confirmed it, is that the Indian armed forces have halted offensive containment operations within the city limits of Mumbai. They are maintaining a perimeter. They are not going in. 21 million people, hundreds of thousands of whom are certainly still alive, still in shelters, still fighting, still sending messages that we are receiving. Like this one from a man named Rohit, who says he is in a building in the Bandra area of Mumbai with approximately 30 people, and that they have water and food for perhaps another week, and that they are listening to our broadcast on a shortwave radio that belonged to his grandfather. Rohit says, "My grandfather used to listen to cricket on this radio. He would be very surprised to hear what it is carrying now. Rohit, we hear you. We are not done fighting for you or anyone else who is still in there."
Day 6. Power grid failure map. I want to give you the current status because the correlation between grid failure and outbreak severity is nearly 1-to-1, and understanding where power still exists tells you something important about where functioning society still exists. Currently maintaining full or near full grid operation: United Kingdom, Norway, Sweden, Finland, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, barely and declining, Canada, partially, with significant outages in Ontario and Quebec, and large portions of the United States interior. Currently in partial operation, Spain, Portugal, Italy's northern region, South Korea, Singapore, Kenya. Currently in near total or total grid failure, France, Germany's eastern half, Poland, Romania, Turkey, Greece, Egypt, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Brazil's urban centers, Indonesia, Philippines. The impact of power loss goes beyond comfort. It means hospital backup generators are exhausting their fuel supply. It means water treatment plants are failing. Without power, clean water is not processed. And within days, even people in shelter face a secondary crisis of water supply. It means refrigerated food supplies are degrading. It means communications are contracting to whatever battery or hand-generated power sources survivors have. I want to be very clear about what the water issue means. Even if you survive the direct biological threat, dehydration and waterborne disease become lethal factors within days to a week without reliable water supply. If you have not yet addressed water collection and storage in your shelter, rain collection, stored bottled supplies, any available filtration, please prioritize this immediately.
Day 7, 1 week. I want to take stock because a week is a milestone even in the middle of catastrophe. 7 days ago, the world had a population of approximately 8 billion people. Today, our best estimate, and I want to be honest that this is extrapolated from fragmented data and carries significant uncertainty, is that somewhere between 300 million and 500 million people have died directly from this event. The range is wide because the uncertainty is genuine. Warsaw, Mumbai, Bucharest, Istanbul's European side, Osaka, Lagos, Sao Paulo, Manila, Cairo. These are cities that are largely gone as functioning entities. Their populations are largely unaccounted for in 7 days. I'm going to read that sentence again because I think it is important that it land fully. In 7 days, the equivalent of between 3 and 6% of the global human population has died. This is the fastest mass death event in human recorded history, significantly faster than the Black Death, faster than any war, faster than any previous pandemic. And it is not over. It is not close to over. But I want to also say, 7 days in, there are still billions of people alive. The shelter-in-place strategy is working for people who are in viable shelters. The military perimeters, imperfect as they are slowing spread in some regions. Australia is largely intact. New Zealand is largely intact. Much of Canada's interior is intact. Parts of Africa that acted quickly, Rwanda, Botswana, are still functioning. The story is not entirely told. It is not.
Day 10. I want to describe what is happening at the port of Rotterdam, because it represents something that I think illustrates the interconnected fragility of the global supply chain in a way that will have enormous long-term consequences. Rotterdam was the largest port in Europe, processing approximately 11 million containers a year. It was the entry point for a vast portion of Europe's food, medicine, industrial components, and fuel. As of 4 days ago, the port has ceased operation, not because of direct outbreak activity in Rotterdam itself, though there has been some, but because the container ships are not coming. The crews of commercial vessels, when given a choice between sailing into a port that might be in outbreak territory and staying at sea, are staying at sea. There are currently estimated to be over 3,000 commercial vessels anchored or drifting in open ocean, their crews unwilling to make port in affected regions. This means that the supply chains that feed Europe's surviving populations are severing. This is not immediately catastrophic. There are reserve stocks. But in 4 to 6 weeks, the absence of resupply begins to matter enormously in already strained shelter situations. The global just-in-time logistics system, which was designed for maximum efficiency with essentially zero redundancy, is proving devastatingly fragile when its human operators make entirely rational individual decisions not to enter danger zones.
Day 12. I have been getting messages from bunkers. Not just individuals, not just families. Actual organized bunker communities. I want to tell you about two of them because they represent different models of how human beings are organizing themselves when the surface world becomes inaccessible. The first is in Norway, a converted mine system in the Gudbrandsdalen Valley, which has approximately 400 people in it, organized with what sounds like remarkable efficiency. The message came from a woman named Astrid, who says they have established working groups for food, medical care, security, child education, and notably documentation. A team of people whose job is to record everything, to keep a history. She says, well, we know we might not make it. We know the mine might not hold forever, but we are writing everything down because if there is an afterward, it will need to know what the during was like. The second is a university building in Cape Town, South Africa, an underground lecture hall complex. Approximately 600 people. They have university food service stores, a medical facility, and according to their message, one of the most diverse human gatherings in the world. Students and faculty from 46 countries trapped together by circumstance. Their message, we are having arguments about everything, policy, resource allocation, who is in charge. It is very human and very difficult, and also I think actually the most hopeful thing I have seen in 2 weeks. Because people who are arguing are people who believe there is a future to argue about.
Day 14. 2 weeks. The United States situation requires a substantial update because it has evolved in ways that were, in hindsight, predictable but are nonetheless significant in their scope. The hardline strategy, military perimeters around outbreak-affected urban cores, has had mixed results. In cities with geographic advantages, such as San Francisco, where the peninsula provides natural barriers, the perimeters have held with reasonable fidelity. In flat, sprawling urban environments, Houston, Dallas, Atlanta, the perimeter approach has been inadequate to contain a threat that moves across terrain without regard for checkpoints. The result is that a significant portion of the American Southeast is now considered a broad outbreak zone rather than a series of contained clusters. The U.S. government has retreated to what is essentially a fortress state model, maintaining control of key infrastructure nodes, certain military bases, and a number of federally designated civilian shelter facilities, while acknowledging that large portions of the country's geography are outside effective government control. I want to be precise about what that means. It does not mean those areas are uninhabited. There are millions of people in rural and semi-rural American communities who are, by some combination of geographic luck and community organization, managing their situations. The absence of federal control does not equal the absence of survival. Human beings are adaptable in ways that formal government structures are not.
Day 16. I want to read a message from a man named James, who is an American. Location, he says, Western Kentucky. He is in a farmhouse with his wife, 3 children, 4 neighbors, and what he describes as an amount of canned goods that makes me feel we were prepared for something even though we never consciously prepared for this. He says, I am a farmer. I have always grown food. I have always understood that the world I lived in was built on top of a much older world, a world that knew how to feed itself from the ground it stood on. I think about that a lot these days. I think about all the things we forgot how to do in order to do other things. I think the world that is coming when this is over, and it will be over, I believe that. I think that world is going to have to remember some of what we forgot. I think it is going to hurt to remember, but I think it is possible. James. I want to ask your permission to read that message every day of this broadcast, because I think it is the most clarifying thing I have heard. A farmer in Western Kentucky who grows food and believes in afterward. That is the signal I want to keep receiving.
Day 20. 3 weeks since the start. Casualty estimates revised. Current best estimate, triangulated from military assessments, survivor testimony, and remaining satellite imaging analysis, 1.4 billion fatalities. I am going to repeat that. 1.4 billion. This represents approximately 17% of the pre-event global population. Major urban population centers that are now considered fully non-communicating, with effective total population loss or near total population loss. Warsaw, Mumbai, Cairo, Manila, Lagos, Jakarta, Sao Paulo, Buenos Aires, Karachi. Cities with estimated 50 to 80% population loss, now in varying states of restricted survival. Paris, Istanbul, Chicago, Houston, Dhaka, Kinshasa. I want to also name the places that are surviving, because it matters to say these names. Oslo, Stockholm, Helsinki, Reykjavik, Wellington, Sydney, battered and changed but functioning, parts of rural North America, parts of East Africa, parts of inland China, which activated an extraordinarily aggressive containment response that was brutal in its methodology, but has preserved significant population in interior regions, parts of South America's Andean regions. The map of human survival, 3 weeks in, is concentrated in places that are either geographically isolated, capable of rapid aggressive response, or predominantly rural. The dense coastal urban civilizations of the modern world have proven devastatingly vulnerable.
Day 22. We have received word that the group in Paris, Antoine and Leo and the baker and the retired officer and the young doctor, are still alive. Antoine sent another message. He says, Leo has started talking more. He told us yesterday that before he came underground, he saw his parents go out the door of their apartment and not come back. He told us very matter-of-factly the way children sometimes process things, not because they feel it less, but because they feel it differently. He says his mother used to sing him a song at night. He could not remember the whole song. The baker, her name is Céleste. She sat with him for 2 hours, humming different melodies until he recognized one. Now Céleste sings that song to him every night before he sleeps. I do not know what that song is called, but it still exists somewhere underground in Paris. Whatever happens up there, that song is still happening down here. Céleste, Leo. A song whose name we do not know, still being sung. I would like to suggest, if you are in a shelter anywhere in the world and you are listening to this, that you sing something tonight. Whatever you know. Hum it if you can't remember the words. Because sound, human sound, is one of the things that separates living from merely surviving.
Day 25. Science update. We have received, through a relay chain that I want to acknowledge with genuine admiration, a sequence of messages passed from station to station like a kind of whisper network spanning 3 continents. A scientific assessment from a team of researchers who have been working in what they describe as a still functional biosafety facility in Melbourne, Australia. These are virologists, and while I cannot independently verify their credentials, the technical content of their assessment is internally consistent and sophisticated in ways that cannot be easily faked. Their findings, summarized. The pathogen causing this event is a novel RNA virus that appears to have been modified from a natural bat-borne precursor. The modification, whether natural or artificial, they explicitly decline to conclude, dramatically increases neurotropism, meaning the virus's ability to target and replicate in brain tissue. The mechanism of behavioral change is not demonic or mystical or the stuff of old stories. It is the virus attacking and disabling specific brain regions while leaving the motor cortex and certain survival reflex pathways largely functional. The result is not undeath. The result is a person whose higher functions have been destroyed and who operates on a degraded reflex architecture. The Melbourne team's most significant finding, which I want to deliver carefully, the virus has a lifespan in an affected host. Infected individuals, they estimate, begin neurological degradation of motor function at approximately 3 to 4 weeks post-infection. At 6 to 8 weeks, mobility ceases. The threat, they suggest, has a natural endpoint, but that endpoint is weeks away, and in those weeks, the infected can continue to spread the virus, and the surviving human populations must endure.
Day 27. I want to talk about something that has been happening as the weeks pass and the shock of the first days begins to be replaced by the grinding difficulty of extended survival. I have been receiving messages about conflict, about disagreement within survivor groups, about the dark aspects of human nature that do not disappear when external danger is present. Sometimes they intensify. There have been reports of shelter groups fracturing over resource allocation, reports of violence between neighboring survivor communities competing for food or water sources. A message from a survivor in rural Germany describes a conflict between two groups, one barricaded in a supermarket, one in a nearby residential building, that escalated to the point of casualties over access to water from a nearby stream. This is not a surprise. Resource scarcity, fear, and close quarters have always produced the worst of human behavior alongside the best. I want to name this clearly, not to create hopelessness, but because understanding it is necessary. The communities that will survive not just the biological threat, but the social pressure of extended isolation are the ones that have invested in governance, in agreed upon rules, in leadership that has legitimacy, in conflict resolution processes. The instinct toward community is human. So is the instinct toward tribalism. How those two instincts are managed in the weeks and months ahead will determine as much about the future as the pathogen itself.
Day 29. Military situation worldwide. The organized military forces of the following nations are still operating in a coordinated manner. United States, significantly reduced but functional, with command structure intact at senior level. United Kingdom, largely intact, now providing the logistical backbone of European survivor support. Norway, intact, coordinating with Sweden and Finland. Australia, intact, with some of the most organized civilian-military integration we have seen. Japan, reduced but fighting, with extraordinary discipline. South Korea, reduced, focused on holding the Seoul perimeter. Canada, operating in a distributed command structure, but operational. Portions of the Chinese military in inland provinces, operating under an emergency command that has maintained, as far as we can tell, a hard quarantine of coastal regions. The nations whose organized military forces have effectively ceased to function as national entities. Poland, Romania, Hungary, France, Germany as a national entity, though German military units exist as independent operational groups. Brazil, Nigeria, Pakistan, Indonesia, Philippines. I want to address one development directly. There have been reports of a nuclear incident in France, specifically at the Flamanville nuclear power plant in Normandy. I want to be careful here. Our best current assessment is that the plant experienced an uncontrolled cooling event, not a detonation, not a weapon, as a result of the loss of operational staff. The French government has not confirmed this. There is a radiation monitoring station in southern England that is reporting elevated background readings. This is being tracked. It is a concern. It is not, at this moment, an apocalyptic nuclear event, but it is one of the cascading secondary hazards that the loss of operational staff at critical infrastructure creates, and it will not be the last such incident.
Day 30. 1 month. 1 month since Marta barricaded a door in Krakow with a refrigerator and held a 4-year-old who asked when her mother was coming. 1 month since Adeze stayed at her post in Bucharest because her patients couldn't move themselves. 1 month since Antoine and Leo went underground in Paris. 1 month since a Warsaw civil defense operator told his colleague in Budapest that he was not afraid. I want to take the full weight of 30 days and hold it before we give you the numbers. Because numbers are how we understand scale, but they are not how we understand meaning. 30 days ago, 8 billion people woke up to a world they recognized. Today, that world is changed in a way that is permanent. Not because everything is destroyed, it isn't. But because the before and after line has been drawn, and everyone alive knows which side of it they are standing on. I want to say something to every person listening right now. You are on the alive side of that line. That is not nothing. That is the whole thing. You are alive, and while you are alive, you carry everyone you have ever loved, everyone you have lost, every city you have walked through, every song you have ever heard. You carry all of it. Be careful with it. The world needs what you carry.
Day 30. Final Comprehensive Situation Report. Let me give you the full picture as clearly as I can. Here is what we know about the origin and cause of this event. The pathogen, which the Melbourne research team has now formally designated RN-51 for RNA neurotropic virus 1, is, based on genomic analysis completed 48 hours ago, a genetically modified variant of a naturally occurring bat coronavirus. The modification is precise, too precise to be coincidence. The evidence, and I present this as evidence, not as confirmed fact, because the full forensic accounting will take years, suggests the pathogen was engineered, either deliberately or as the result of a gain-of-function research accident, at a laboratory facility that has not yet been publicly identified. The WHO's Emergency Investigation Committee, which has been operating from a secure facility in Geneva, issued a preliminary finding yesterday that states, the genomic structure of RN-51 is inconsistent with natural evolutionary pathways and bears characteristics consistent with deliberate modification. That is the cause, a modified virus, engineered or accidentally created, released or escaped. The reckoning for how and where and by whom will be the defining question of whatever world comes after this one. But that is the cause. Now, the final numbers. I want to give these slowly and clearly because they represent human lives and deserve that care. Global fatality count, as estimated at the 30-day mark by the combined assessment of the WHO Emergency Committee, the U.S. Military Command, the UK Military Command, and independent research stations in Australia and Norway, with a composite methodology that our team has independently reviewed. 2.1 billion people. 2.1 billion people have died in 30 days, primarily from direct outbreak-related violence, with secondary contributions from infrastructure failure, loss of medical care, displacement and exposure, and the early stages of supply chain collapse. That represents approximately 26% of the pre-event global population. 6 billion people, approximately, remain alive. Not all of them are safe. Not all of them are in shelter. Some of them are in situations that will kill them in the weeks ahead without intervention. But 6 billion people are alive. Nations that are considered lost or functionally non-existent as state entities. Poland, Romania, Hungary, the Philippines, Bangladesh, Nigeria, the Democratic Republic of Congo, large portions of France and Germany, Brazil's eastern seaboard. Nations that are considered severely compromised but surviving. The United States, India, Turkey, Indonesia, Egypt, Pakistan, Argentina, Colombia, Mexico. Nations that are considered substantially intact. United Kingdom, Australia, New Zealand, Norway, Sweden, Finland, Iceland, Canada's interior, Rwanda, Botswana, parts of inland China, Japan, barely, and wounded.
And what remains? What remains of the world? I want to answer that not just with geopolitics and numbers, because there is something more important to say. What remains is Astrid in the Norwegian mine, documenting everything so the afterward will know what the during was like. What remains is Rohit in Mumbai, still transmitting on his grandfather's radio. What remains is Kwame's church in Accra with 43 people in it. What remains is James in western Kentucky growing food, believing in afterward. What remains is Céleste singing Leo's mother's song to him in an underground metro station in Paris. And the fact that as of this morning, 30 days in, we have confirmed that Antoine's group is still alive, still in that station, and that they have been contacted by a French military unit operating out of Toulouse that is planning a rescue operation. Leo is going to be rescued. I believe that. I am saying it on the air, and I refuse to take it back. What remains of the world is human beings who, in the worst circumstances that any generation of our species has ever faced, are still making bread, still singing, still writing things down, still staying at their post because someone else stayed at theirs, still arguing about the future because they believe there is one, still listening to the radio, you, right now.
The Melbourne team's finding about the natural endpoint of the infection is, I want to re-emphasize, the most significant piece of scientific news this broadcast has carried. The pathogen is lethal to its host in a time frame of 6 to 8 weeks from initial infection. The first wave of infection began 30 days ago. That means the earliest infected individuals are approaching the halfway point of the pathogen's active window. The worst of the direct biological threat, if the Melbourne findings are correct, and we have no contradicting data, peaks in the next 2 to 3 weeks and begins to decline significantly around week 6 to 8. That timeline is brutal. It will claim more lives. But it ends. I want to say that clearly and without equivocation. This ends. Not because of a cure, not because of a weapon, because biology has its own clock, and the pathogen's clock is running. What follows that biological resolution is a civilization rebuilding project of a scale that no human institution has been designed for, and that will be the work of decades. But the acute phase ends. The acute phase has a finish line. And the people in shelters around the world, the people listening to this broadcast, are the people who will cross that finish line and begin the work on the other side.
I want to close this broadcast, not end our coverage. We are not ending our coverage. Silent Waves Radio is not going off air. But close this phase of our coverage with something I have been holding for the right moment. It came in a message, a single line, from a listener who did not give a name and did not give a location. It arrived in our relay 3 days ago. It reads, I have lost my whole family. I am alone. I am in a basement. I have a radio and I listen to you every day. Today I found a seed packet in a box of old junk, tomatoes. I have never grown anything, but I am going to try. No name, no location. A person alone in a basement who found a seed packet and decided to try. That person is out there right now, somewhere under the ruined surface of the world, reading the instructions on a packet of tomato seeds. The civilizations of this world were built initially by people who figured out how to grow food. Everything else, the cities, the networks, the satellites, the radio frequencies that are carrying my voice to you right now, everything else is downstream of someone, somewhere, putting a seed in the ground and deciding to wait and see what happened. We are going to be those people again, not instead of everything we were, in addition to it. The weight of what we have lost will travel with us, and it should, because grief is the cost of love, and we are not people who refuse to pay that cost. But we are going forward. With a radio, with a seed packet, with a song whose name we do not know. with the stubborn, magnificent, entirely human refusal to stop.
This is Alex Mercer. You are listening to Silent Waves Radio, broadcasting on emergency frequency from a secure location. We will be here when you wake up tomorrow. We will be here the day after that. Stay in shelter. Maintain your water supply. Keep your radio close. Tell people around you what you know. Write things down. If you have medical knowledge, share it. If you have food, be as generous as you can safely be. If you are alone, know that this frequency connects you to every other person who is listening right now, and that is a community, however strange its shape. The Melbourne research team has given us a timeline. 6 to 8 weeks of acute threat. After that, a different problem and a different broadcast. We will be here for it. All of it.
Marta in Krakow. We never heard from you again after that first message, and I don't know what that means. But I know you existed. I know you barricaded a door with a refrigerator. I know you told a 4-year-old named Zosha that her mother was coming soon, because what else do you tell a 4-year-old? I know you asked us not to stop talking, and we didn't. We didn't stop. And on behalf of every person who stayed at their post, who sang the song, who planted the seed, who helped someone they didn't have to help, who chose, in the middle of everything, to remain human, thank you, thank you. This is Sierra Lane on Silent Waves Radio. We'll be right here.
Stay safe. Stay together. Stay on frequency. This is Silent Waves Radio. We are not going anywhere.